Let's draw an Easter bunny today. I hope you are excited because I am. This is kind of a bonus lesson. I hadn't planned on doing this, but I just kept thinking I want to create an Easter bunny lesson for you. So I hope you like it. It's going to be super fun. I'm going to walk you through the steps. Don't have to be nervous. You know, with me, I'm going to walk you through all the little tips and tricks that'll help you draw better. So before we begin, you're going to need three things, the same things we use every time, just a pencil, any kind of pencil, an eraser. If you don't have an eraser laying around the house, just use the eraser on the end of your pencil. And the last thing is a piece of paper. Now, I always tell you, I just use the paper that comes out of the printer. I don't use anything fancy. If you have fancier paper, good for you. You can use that, but I don't. I just use my copy paper. So this is the little guy that we're going to draw today and that I designed. And so pause the video, go get those three items, a pencil, an eraser, and a piece of paper. And while you're looking around the house, you might want to look for a little thing of crayons or maybe some colored pencils for coloring, but we'll talk about that later. For now, the only thing you need is a pencil, an eraser, and a piece of paper. Pause the video. Come on back when you're ready. All right, let's begin. I'm so excited. Now, the last time, or all the other times that we've been drawing, I always draw a rectangle up here, and this is going to represent my piece of paper. You have your piece of paper in front of you. Now, before we begin, I think it's really helpful if you have some kind of padding underneath your paper before we start drawing. So let's say you're working on your kitchen counter or you're working on your dining room table, and there might be some crumbs on the table or there might be like some texture on the tablecloth. So you might want to grab a stack of magazines or a newspaper. Maybe your parents have a newspaper laying around the house. Lay that down and then put your drawing paper on top of that. I really like old magazines or even a stack of paper out of the printer. So you could grab a little stack out of the printer. That's what I did. And lay that down and then put your drawing paper on top of that. That way there's a little bit of a cushion before we begin. And you're going to notice that your lines when you're drawing are a lot smoother. They're not going to be as bumpy and rough. Okay, let's begin. So I'm going to attach my little drawing up here to the whiteboard so that you can see him. And you can see that these look very similar. That's because I did my original drawing on a piece of paper. Then I went over it with a black colored pencil. So this is my original little drawing. I went over it with a black colored pencil when I was all done. And then I erased all my pencil lines, and then I colored it later. So for now, we're going to work on just the black and white version. And then once we're ready to draw the entire thing out and we erase our pencil lines, we'll work on coloring. All right, so let's get this guy going. Well, every time we draw, I always ask you to find the center of your paper. So we're going to find the center. I just draw an imaginary plus sign in the middle of my paper until I find the center. I'm going to make a tiny dot there, and this helps me to proportion my drawing so it's not too big or too small or way squished over to the left or the right. And when I look at my drawing here, the center of my drawing is right about here. So it's kind of right underneath his chin. So how that's going to help us is that when we're drawing our little character, then, did you see me just kind of sliding down the board? So when we draw our little character, we're going to put him right in the middle. So thinking about his tummy first, and then we'll do his head later. Around this dot, I'm going to draw a wide oval, so he's kind of chubby. So I'm going to make my Easter bunny kind of chubby. I'm just going to draw a big wide oval. It almost looks like we're drawing an Easter egg already, doesn't it? So just draw an oval or a circle. And I don't want you to worry about the oval being perfect. Don't worry about that because we're going to erase as we go along. So just get a light line. And that's another trick. When you're drawing, try to draw as light as possible because when you're erasing, the harder you draw, the more it's going to leave marks on your paper. So really practice each time we do this, drawing a little lighter. All right, once you have your little oval in the center right here, you can see I've got kind of even spaces on both. But let's say I was drawing it and I noticed that my oval was a little bit too far over to this side. All I would have to do is just go over here and make it a little wider so it's even. And then I usually use my fingers to measure both sides of the paper before I get started. So for my paper over here, if you can see my drawing, my oval of his tummy was about 3 fingers away from the side, and then I measured on this side, and it was about 3 fingers away from this side. So when you're measuring using your hand, then you can make sure that it's kind of in the center. So I'm going to erase this dot. We don't need that anymore. And then we're going to move on to drawing his head. Now I'm going to overlap a circle on top of this oval. Overlap just means it's going to cross over. So I'm going to go up here for his head, and I'm going to draw a wide oval or circle right there. So you can see how they overlap, they intersected, they crossed through one another. Now I'm going to erase this line right up here. We don't need this anymore, so we're going to erase this line here. Now, right about now, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, my circle is kind of crooked. I really wish I would have done a better job on my oval. I don't want you to worry about that. If you notice, I changed the whole drawing up by drawing a little fur around everything later. So it's not going to stay like this. It's just kind of like we're blocking in the shapes. It's like we're building a snowman, and then we're going to change it later and add ears. All right, next, we're going to go up here to the top part here. We're going to add his ear. So I'm going to go right up here, and I'm going to draw just a little loop. Now, I know you're noticing that his ear is folded over on this side. We'll do that later, but for now, we're just going to make an oval because you might want to keep his ears kind of high, or you might want to bend them over on the end. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, so I'm just going to go over here and draw another ear looped around. So make sure you drew your 2 ovals. Now, once you've done that, now you're going to decide, do you want to take his ear and make it kind of fluffed over on the side? And if you do, very easy to do. All I'm going to do is add a little flap right here. I know my hand's blocking it as I drew it, but you can see I just kind of flopped his ear over. Now, you don't want to flop it over too far, just a little bit, so I just kind of drew a little loop on the end. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I know it doesn't look right yet, but it will, I promise. I'm going to flop over this ear too. I'm going to flop it around. All right, now we're going to fix it. So let's go up here. We're going to erase this part. We don't need that anymore. We're going to do the same thing on this side. So get your eraser and erase this part. Now, I forgot to mention that as I'm drawing and you are feeling like, oh, I need to erase a little, she's talking too fast, just pause the video and then push play every time you're ready to start again. I'll try to go as slow as I can, but some of you are going to be able to draw a lot faster, and some of you, probably like me, it's going to take you a little longer to get it. And that's the way I work. So I just want you to take your time. And as you keep getting better and better at this, you can start feeling more comfortable. You'll be able to follow right along with me. Okay, let's move on to that ear. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little extra line going in right here. So I added a little line there. And I'm going to add that same line on this side. This is going to be the inside of his ear right here. So once we've added that line, we're going to do the same thing on this side. So add a little line here and a line here. And later we'll add fur to it. Right now we're just blocking everything in. Okay, now that we've done that, you can see this is going to be the inside of the ear, and this is the furry outside the ear. We're going to erase that little part right here. We don't need that anymore. Now, once we do that, now our ear is actually going to look like it's folded over. See how it kind of looks a little bit more natural on this side than this side? Now then, we're going to erase the line here because we don't need that anymore. And now this ear looks like it's folded over. Now, it might be kind of cute to leave one ear standing up and one ear folded over. You could do that as well. Okay, now we're going to go up here. We're going to erase this little part up here. We don't need that. And this part here. So now his ears look like they're actually attached to his head. All right, so now his ears are done. Now we're going to move down to this bottom area here. We're going to add some feet, and then we'll make them cute later. Then we'll add what's in his hands. We'll add his hands after we draw what's in his hands. Actually, we're going to do that later. So here, we're going to draw his foot. I'm going to start with the 1 foot on this side. So I kind of have him kicking 1 foot up in the air so you can see the pads underneath his foot. So for here on this side, I'm going to overlap a little oval. Now I got to find the middle because I want 1 foot on one side and one on the other. So I'm going to make a little dot right here at the bottom just to help kind of proportion everything out. And then I'm going to draw a kind of a rainbow shape on this side. Now we did this before if you followed along with my dog lesson. And if you haven't done the dog lesson, you're going to need to try that one. That's a really fun one as well. And then once I make my rainbow shape, I'm just going to close it off on the bottom. We'll add toes later. We're just kind of blocking the shape then. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make this foot sticking up. Now, it doesn't have to be sticking up. We could draw another foot right like this one on this side if we wanted to. So on this side, I'm just going to draw an oval. Now I'm going to make his foot kind of up off the bottom of the ground here. So for now, I think I'm going to go like this, just to remind me where the ground is, because I want the foot to kind of be looking like it's kicking up in the air a little bit. And then I'm just going to draw an oval here. So that's going to be his foot kind of kicking up in the air. You see I have a little space right here underneath. Now it's time to erase. Get your eraser. So we're going to erase this line in here. We don't need that anymore. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to erase that line in here and get rid of any of the lines that we don't want anymore. Okay, so now we have 1 foot kicking up in the air and 1 foot down on the ground. So now we're going to make it look actually like a foot by adding some toes. I'm going to draw the letter C on this side and a backward C on this side. So that's going to be just 3 toes in the front, 1, 2, 3. Now you can see this foot right here. I think I want to fatten up that toe a little bit, so I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. Yours probably looks a lot better than mine, but I'm working up on this whiteboard. I can't draw very well up here because I'm holding my board is up. Where yours is flat on the table, you probably draw a lot smoother and a little bit better than I'm doing right now. Now I'm going to erase that line. I don't need that line anymore. I'm going to go over to this foot now, and he's going to have 3 toes. See 1, 2, 3 here, because I gave him 3 toes here. I think rabbits actually have 4 toes, but we're doing 3 today. So I'm going to draw my middle toe is a little wider, so I'm going to round that up like a little rainbow up at the top. And then I'm going to round the other toe next to it. And I'm going to round this toe next to it. See how I did that? It used to just be an oval, but I kind of made them look more like toes now. 1, 2, 3 little rainbows. Now let me clean up my lines here so you can see that. You don't have to do that. You could just leave it an oval. It would be just adorable like that. I'm just giving you some extra details if you want to do it. And then we're going to put his little pads underneath his feet. I don't even know if rabbits have pads, but we're going to give him pads under his foot. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And then for the bottom pad, that would be the larger one at the bottom, I'm going to just draw a rainbow shape. Kind of looks like a face, doesn't it? 2 eyes, a nose, and a grumpy mouth, like that. And then I'm going to round it out by making a curve here and a curve here. We could go straight across, or we could kind of curve it up just a little bit like this. All right, so now we have his foot up in the air. He's got his other foot down on the ground. Now we're going to go over to up into his face. Let's work on his face. All right, my favorite part. Just make his face cute. We're going to go right here to the bottom part here. And I taught you about this when we did the bear and the dog. And that is the muzzle. Remember, we learned about the muzzle. The muzzle is the part of the face that sticks out. So for my rabbit's muzzle, I'm going to go like this and make a big oval like that, or circle. That will work too. And most of this is going to get erased, so don't worry about that circle being perfect. We just really need that top line. And then once we have that there, we're going to add his nose. Now, this is fun because when you do create his nose, you can make his nose any way you like. So for instance, if you make a large, wide V, look at how wide I'm making my V, and you round it up on the top, look at how cute he is with this big, huge nose. I'll change it later, but I'm going to keep it here for just a minute. Now, let's erase this bottom part. We don't need this anymore. I'm going to erase it about halfway up. I'm going to draw a short line down. Oh, we can change his face in so many ways from here. I'm so excited to show you all these tricks. But for now, I'm just going to keep his nose kind of big so you can see me draw it. So I'm going to now figure out what kind of mouth he wants. So in my little drawing, I had his mouth just very sweet. Can you see that? It's just like a little tiny hole. But you don't have to keep it like that. You could do so many different mouths. Once we create his eyes, you'll figure out what you want to do. But for now, let's just keep it simple. We're just going to draw a little hole right there, like he's going like that. And then we're going to go up here and create his eyes. Now, when we were doing the dog lesson, as well as the bear lesson, I told you to keep the eyes close to the muzzle. And the reason we want to do that is look at how creepy he would look if we put his eyes up here. Totally has a different look, right? It's not that it's bad, and that's a definite style of art, but it's not the style I want to draw today. So you can see that it's the same thing. I drew nose, a mouth, and eyes, but it looks a little different when the eyes are super far apart and way up kind of high on his head. So you might like that style, and you can draw it that way, but that's not the way I'm going to be drawing mine today. So for mine, I'm going to be drawing my ovals resting right on the muzzle, and I'm going to make sure that I'm drawing a large, tall, wide oval, so I have room to really go in there and draw some cute eyeballs later. Now, once I have drawn that big oval, I want you to check your work. It's super important to do this. So what you're going to do is just take your pencil and lay it down on your paper like this in the middle. And once you lay it down, now you can see whether your eyes are evenly spaced apart. Because this is what always happens to me. I'll do my eyes, and I'll end up finding out that one of my eyes is too far away from the center, and the other one is really close to the center. So lay your pencil down on your paper, check your proportions. Proportions means how big or small your eye is. Make sure they're the same. Make sure that they're evenly spaced apart. And then we can move on. And oh, wait, we have to erase. Remember, just pause the video, erase, and then come back. Now we can move on to the eye. So I'm going to draw a like a smile curve in my eye here, and a smile curve in my eye there. We've done this style before, but if this is your first time drawing with me, what this is going to end up being is the pupil. The pupil is the black dot in your eye, and then we're going to add a highlight. So we're just going to very lightly with our pencil go in and color a little bit of that black in, but I like to leave a little highlight. A highlight is just a shiny light in the eye. So as you can see, I only colored a part of that black in, and I left a little bit of white up at the top. Now, you could color the whole thing in solid black. It'll have a different look, but it's still going to be adorable. Now, once you're done with that, then you're going to add a little bit of an eyelash over to the side. Now, we don't want to make these really long. You're just going to make 2 short little lines or 3 little lines on the side. And then you're going to add a very small eyebrow up above. Now, we don't want to make these big, hairy, bushy eyebrows. That wouldn't look right. Just a short little eyebrow there. And then we're going to kind of change up his face a little. Right now, he looks very smooth, and we want him to look more fuzzy. So I'm going to change up his cheeks here and here. So I'm going to erase with my finger. Now you're going to take your eraser and just very softly erase that away. So we're going to change it up just a little bit. So we want to give him a little bit more fur on the side of his cheeks. And if you remember in my dog and my bear lesson, I was teaching you that your hair grows down. So you don't want to draw your hair growing straight out, because this would look really strange if I drew his hair growing out like that. It wouldn't look very natural. So what you're going to do is very softly just brush your pencil along the old line that you used to have that used to be smooth, and we're just going to brush it very softly and give him a little bit of fur coming down on the side of his cheek. Now, you can see that that side looks a little bit more natural than this side, so I'm going to erase this. I'm going to go over here on this side, do the same thing, very softly with my, now I'm using a pen. Yours is going to look so much nicer because you're using a pencil. A pen is not quite as forgiving as a pencil is. And then down here on his chin, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to lightly erase and very softly give him a little bit of a furry chin. Now we might change that later once we decide what he's going to be holding in his hands. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so he's starting to get a little cuter. Now up here, I'm going to change up his top of his head also. I want to give him a little fur up there. So I'm going to erase up the top of his head, and I'm going to put just a few little hairs poking up at the top of his head. I'm going to give him a little bit of fur right here in front of his ear. If you have a dog or cat at home and you can see inside their ear, especially a cat, their ears stick straight up, you'll see they have a little hair in front of the hole where their ear is. I'm going to add a little fur around the side of his ears on the top here. You notice I'm just brushing my line very softly, and they're not long. Okay, and then for his whiskers, I'm just going to take my pencil and I'm going to flick it very quickly 3 times. Now, this is a trick when you're drawing whiskers. I love to show you tricks, so watch this. So if I was to take my pencil and draw a hard line like this, so to me, it kind of looks like he has 3 toothpicks stuck in his cheek. It doesn't look very natural. Now I'm going to draw whiskers a little softer on the other side. And so what I do is I take my pencil and I just kind of flick it once, twice, 3 times. I do 3 whiskers. You could do more than that. You don't want too many. So now I'm going to do it more naturally on this side. Once, twice, 3 times. So if you look at those 2 sides, which side looks more natural for the whiskers? The one where I drew slow or the one where I drew quick, flicking my hand? I think this looks a little bit more natural, so I'm going to erase these, and then you can decide which way you want to make your whiskers. So I'm going to erase this here with my finger, and now I'm going to draw my whiskers on this side. So I'm going to flick once, twice, 3 times. Okay, moving on to his hands, we have to decide what is he holding. For instance, if I have his hands like this, he could be holding a basket with the eggs inside of it. If I had his hands out like this, he could be holding a gigantic egg. But I decided to give his hands 2 different eggs, and that way I have more of an opportunity to color more. So if there's 2 eggs, I could do 2 eggs with 2 different patterns on them. So I'm going to draw 1 oval or circle for his paw here on this side. Do you notice it's overlapping? That was the word that we used earlier where we're crossing over something. And then I'm going to draw another hand on this side, or paw, I'm sorry, on this side. Now before we move on, let's check our work. Are they the same size? You might want to measure with your fingers. So I used my 2 fingers when I was drawing it here. You can see how I did that. It was about 2.5 fingers. And then I measured it on this side. It was about 2.5 fingers. So on my board here, it looks like mine is 3.5 fingers. I'm going to check my work on this side. Uh-oh, that one's a little big. I'm going to have to erase this one and make it a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to make it a tiny bit smaller. So they're about the same size. Now I'm going to check my work again. 3.5 fingers. I'm going to check my work here. Yep, that's about right. 3.5 fingers. You do yours. Pause the video. Come on back when you're ready. All right, if you're ready to move on, we're going to erase the inside. We don't need that. We're going to erase the inside here. You'll notice my circles are not very straight or perfect. It doesn't matter. We're going to be changing it up in just a minute anyway. Okay, let's figure out where the eggs are going to go on my rabbit. So I'm going to make kind of a large egg in each of his hands, but you could make smaller eggs, or he could be holding a bouquet of flowers on this side and maybe an Easter basket on this side. That would be really cute. So I'm going to just follow along with what I drew originally, but if you want to change it up later and have it, he could be holding a sign that says Happy Easter. There's so many things that you could do, but let me move on to drawing the egg. So the first thing is an egg is a very wide oval and it's a little bit more narrow up at the top. So I'm going to start by drawing the top of my egg. So I'm going to first go up and around, making a kind of a gentle point up at the top like this. I'm not worrying about what's underneath because I can erase that all later. And then I'm going to make my egg get kind of fat at the bottom and come back under his paw. See how I did that? Now I'm going to erase everything inside the egg. Now I can leave that whisker showing, or I could make the egg in front of the whisker. It's totally up to you. So I could erase it like this, and now it looks like the egg's in front of his whisker, and that looks fine. And then I'm going to go over to this side. I'm going to do the same thing. And don't worry, we're going to figure out the paws later. First, you have to draw what you're going to be holding, and then we'll know which position to put our paws in. So now I'm going to put another egg over here, I think, or it could be a bouquet of flowers. It could be a sign. It could be, let's see, what else could it be? It could be a big piece of chocolate. So there's my second egg. Now I'm going to erase what's inside the egg. I'm going to erase his whisker. Now remember, pause the video if you need to fix your work. And let's say you drew really hard and your mark is still really showing dark underneath that egg. That's okay because you're just learning. Don't worry about that because you can cover it up later and make some kind of fun design inside your egg to cover that up. So for instance, let's say you can't get rid of that line, it's really bugging you. Then later when you go in with your crayons or colored pencils, you could turn this into a pattern and you could draw some swirly patterns on your eggs and it would hide that little mark. You would never see it. I sometimes have to do that when I'm drawing because I draw too hard and then my erase mark shows, so I just turn it into something else. All right, so once you have your egg drawn, now we're going to move in and we're going to draw the fingers on our front paws of his hands. So we're going to start on this one first. We're going to follow exactly what we did here, but now it's tilted up. So I'm going to draw a curve here. And then a curve here. So it's kind of like how we did a forward C and a backward C before, but they're kind of tilted this direction. And I want a nice big space there in the middle, so he has big paws. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to do kind of a rainbow curve on this side and a curve on this side. And then we're going to make his paws a little bit more furry later. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the top of his paw, just like how we did the head. And I'm just going to give him a little bit of fur on his paw. Remember, your fur is going to be curving because the paw is curving. So I usually start in the middle, and then I curve it the opposite direction when I get to that side. Kind of similar to what I did over there. I'm going to just continue that fur around his paws. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to start right up here at the top. You can erase this a little bit with your eraser if you drew it really dark. Or you can just leave it and draw the fur right over it. Right, now I like to put a little bit of an indentation or a little bit of a mark right there on his paw just to kind of help to show you where his finger is, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can also add a little fur on his finger if you would like to. You could draw a pattern. If you can see here, I drew a stripe on my egg. You could draw flowers later. You could draw zigzag patterns. You could color them rainbow. So now we're going to move down to his belly. And I'm going to give him a little bit of fur. Right now he looks like an egg, so I want to erase this and chubby him up a little bit. So I'm going to give him a little bit more fur on this side and make him a little bit chubbier. I'm going to erase this line right there and make him a little furrier and chubby on this side. Oh my gosh, he's turning out so cute, isn't he? And then right down here, I'm going to put a little fur right at the very bottom. And then we're going to give him a white chest. So, well, later, it doesn't have to be white. Like, let's say you make a white rabbit and you want his chest to be brown. You could do that too. So all I'm going to do is copy this kind of curved line we did before. So I'm just going to add a little bit of fur that comes around like this. So when I color it, let me show you my colored version later. See how I colored him brown and I made his chest white? I'm just going to add a little bit of line here and here and here where it shows. A little bit down there. All right. He's coming along. Now the next part would be to decide where you want to put a little shading in. So the shading is really wonderful because what the shading does is it makes everything look a little bit more dimensional. So what I mean by that is, you see I put a little shading here where his ear is folded over. I did a little shading in the pads of his feet. I did a little shading in his nose here. So let me show you how to do that with your pencil. You can later use your marker. You can use a black colored pencil. When I colored mine, I used a black colored pencil. So let's say you're done with your pencil drawing now, and now you want to outline it. So this would be the time where you would grab your marker, a black colored pencil. You could use a black crayon. That would work really wonderful too. And you're going to go over all the pencil lines that you want to keep. And then you're going to erase the pencil lines that you don't want to keep. So I always start by using my eraser, going over anything I want to get rid of, and I just erase it. So I'm kind of checking my work before I move on. Is there anything, ooh, that ear, I kind of want to erase that line up there in the ear. Is there anything else? Ooh, I don't like that line up there in his paw. I'm going to get rid of that. And a little bit right there. Okay, oh, and I think I'm going to change up the ground, and I'm going to make it look like grass. And you could do this too. So I'm going to erase this a little bit and change it up and turn it into more of a grass. Maybe add some flowers later. So I'm just going to put some little spiky grass up around his foot. I'm going to leave a little space here so it looks like his foot is up off the ground. Later we could add some flowers. We could put some eggs hiding in the grass. And then now you can go in and do your shading and your outlining with your black colored pencil or your crayon. So once you've outlined everything with your black colored pencil or your crayon or a Sharpie marker or a regular Crayola marker, then you can go in and do some shading. So I'm going to go back to my marker again. And unfortunately, my marker is not going to look as good as your black colored pencil or your crayon. But this is where the shading really brings the picture alive. So the first place I'm going to put a little shading is in his nose. So I'm just going to take my pencil and very softly add a little bit of shading in his nose, leaving a little highlight at the top so it looks like the light is shining on his nose. I'm going to add a little shading underneath his ear here. So I'm just going to brush a little bit of shading underneath his ear there, because his ear is folded over, so it would cast a shadow onto the ear. Now your pencil's going to look a little better than my marker because my marker is so black and dark. I can't really do it lightly. I'm going to add a little shading on this ear too, on the underside. I'm just kind of scratching my pen like this. This is just an extra detail. You don't have to do this, but it really does make your picture look kind of cool. I'm going to add a little shading behind his muzzle, just a few little strokes right here in between his eyes. And then for the pads of his feet, I'm going to kind of copy like how I did the nose. I'm going to add a little shading on the pads of his foot, leaving a little highlight on the left side. You could do your highlight on the right side. Doesn't that look kind of fun? I think it's super cute. All right, now that your bunny is pretty much done, now it's time to color. So I'm going to show you my picture and how I colored it. I used just plain Crayola colored pencils. So you get out of the box of pencils. I use these. Crayons would work just as great. Colored pencils are my go-to. I just use my Crayola brand. I love them because you can get some tight detail in there. So as you can see from mine, I colored him a light tan color. Why did I do that? Well, I was trying to decide how I was going to do his chest, and I wanted his chest to show up white. So I decided to color him kind of a warm, kind of a honey brown color, a tan. And then I added a little pink inside of his ear. I added a little pink in his nose, and then I wanted to find another place to put that pink, so I put it down here in the pads of his feet. Now, if you don't have pink, you could take a red crayon and color it very softly, and that will give you kind of the illusion of pink. But I want to show you that crayons would work just as well. So taking my crayon, I'm going to show you a couple tricks. All right, let's start with, let's see, I just grabbed, my regular crayons out of my box here. Let's start with coloring him brown. So I'm looking through my bag, and all I've got is this one dark brown color. Now, that doesn't mean he has to be colored dark. I can color him really softly. I can take my crayon, and here's a trick when you're using your colors. Try to always color in the same direction. This is one of the best things I ever learned, because I would color one way and I'd get bored and I'd start scribbling another way. And pretty soon you start noticing the different ways that your crayon is marked on the paper instead of it looking soft. So watch, I'm going to color one paw very softly, coloring all the same direction. It looks kind of flat right now, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make it show up by adding a little shadow, by taking my crayon and coloring a little heavier around the edges. So you see that it's already starting to look a little bit more rounded and not so flat. Now I'm going to add a little bit of heavier color on one side, like the right side. So watch what happens. I'm still just using brown, the same brown crayon. So now you can see it's really starting, from there, I bet it kind of looks like it's very curved, doesn't it? So when you're working with your crayons, if you can color in one direction, instead of just scrabbling haphazardly, it's going to help your colors to look a little bit more natural. So another trick that you could do with crayons that I think is kind of fun is that you can blend more than one color together. So let's say you wanted to do your bunny brown, but it looks kind of flat to you. You want it to warm up a little bit. So when I'm looking at my colors, I'm going to find another color that would warm up my brown. So I could use yellow, this kind of golden yellow. I could use this orange color. That would be really pretty on my Easter rabbit. So I'm going to try using a little bit of this golden yellow. So I'm just going to scribble a soft little hint of this golden yellow over the brown. It's going to really make that brown look a little bit more rich and not so flat. I want you to see that. Can you see how pretty that looks? So that is a neat trick, and it'll really help your colors to come alive. Now, I'm going to mess up my drawing right now on purpose. I love to do this with my students to show you why I'm teaching you these little tricks. So let's say I colored just kind of like haphazardly, just kind of scribbling some colors and not really paying attention. And I'm scribbling this way, and then I change my mind, and I'm kind of coloring this way, and then I scribble this way. So when you look at those two, you can see that by coloring all the same direction, your eye doesn't notice all those different lines. It just sees something as like one solid, soft paw. So I hope that little trick I taught you today is helpful. You can use that in anything, not just when you're coloring your rabbit. How about when you're coloring the egg? So when you're starting to color your egg, maybe you want to do something that it fades from one color to another. Let me show you in my drawing. I kind of had some fun here, and I put some some blue to turquoise and faded it into green. I added a little pink, and I added a little bit of kind of red on the underside of the ear, just to make it a little bit more shadowed. I really hope you had fun today drawing an Easter bunny. I want to wish you a happy Easter if you celebrate Easter, and I hope you enjoyed my lessons. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do, because that way you get an opportunity to learn all the things I'm going to be teaching. This is just my bonus lesson, but I will be going through the letters of the alphabet and creating an animal for each letter of the alphabet. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful Easter.